Survival at sea is something all military personnel have a keen appreciation for, especially those pilots who say landing on an aircraft carrier is sort of like trying to land on a pencil in your neighbor's Olympic-sized swimming pool. Military specialist Chuck Caro told us there was something to be learned from the Navy's intense water survival training courses, so we shipped him off to Norfolk, Virginia recently to explain what's being done there.
This is 201, have PLC failure. Request emergency landing, over.
Naval aviation is inherently hazardous.
201, punch out.
Often there is nothing a pilot can do except eject from his crippled aircraft and plunge into the ocean where he must survive until rescued. The Navy hones those survival skills with recurring practice at physiological training schools. I attended the 2-day course in Norfolk, Virginia, and was immediately immersed in highly technical classroom study about how the human body reacts under the stresses of high-performance flying. We also got lectures on the proper use of flight gear and survival equipment. Ejection seat training was next. Here, a veteran Marine Corps colonel gets a critique on the fine points of how to eject.
Wrap your thumbs, sir.
Thumbs wrapped around the fingers? Good. How's his feet?
Good.
Eject. Are you feeling any pain or discomfort? Down.
I was next and assumed the rigid head-back position which would prevent bodily injury in a real bailout. And I too got pointers on how to do it correctly.
Prepare to eject. Bring the elbows in.
Okay.
Thumbs wrapped around your fingers.
He's good.
Okay. Eject.
Okay.
You were still a little bit lopsided.
Another phase of training was the altitude chamber.
Engineer, ascend the main accumulator to 25,000 feet. So go ahead.
We took off our oxygen masks to experience our personal symptoms of hypoxia, which is the lack of oxygen at high altitude. I played patty cake with a Marine pilot.
On the page, subtracting 7 from that total. Patty cakers flap everything 2 times. Flap everything
At
twice.
about 65 seconds, he started losing coordination. I started feeling air hunger and euphoria. And 10 seconds later, I lost coordination too.
Okay, seat 4 and 5. Flap everything 1 time now. 1 time. Definite muscular coordination.
At 2 minutes and 15 seconds, we were told to go back on 100%
I think it's
oxygen.
time for seats 4 and 5 to back on oxygen. Turn the green switch to the on position, rotate your mask to your face, take some good breaths of the oxygen, but when you go back to normal, then connect your pitch. Sit back in your seat and relax. Okay, 6, you can go back on oxygen now.
With the altitude chamber ride completed, we file out for classroom training in parachuting techniques.
As soon as you get air going up inside that canopy, it will inflate. 2 things that might cause this are a buildup of excessive static electricity, which nylon is notorious for, or a wet canopy.
Though I am an experienced parachutist, the Navy had some new wrinkles about how to land in the ocean. In a suspended parachute harness, I'm told that I have a broken right arm and that I must deploy my life raft, but the release handle is on the right side, out of reach.
And how are you going to deploy your raft?
Down here.
Okay, it's that yellow handle right down here. Okay. Okay, now your right arm's broken. You can't reach that and you can't pull it. How are you going to get to that with your left hand?
Try to cross arm through the harness?
No, there's an easier way.
Under?
That's one way.
The correct solution, I am taught, is to release the left side connector and then kick the raft over to the good left hand.
Voila.
On the second day comes the hard part, water survival training. First, a warm-up swim. Navy Lieutenant Scott Beach and I jump in and are graded on our swimming skills. Next comes the first of 3 tests that must be passed. The 75-yard survival swim, complete with combat boots, flight suit, G-suit, torso harness, survival vest, helmet, and gloves. About 20 pounds of gear with a lot of water drag. When my turn comes, I hit the water and immediately feel the heavy drag. After breaststroking about 20 yards, I am ordered to change strokes. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Beach jumps in and promptly sinks from all the weight. He comes up and starts breaststroking. After 60 yards, the drag created by the wet gear is extremely exhausting. Just to keep from sinking, I have to constantly change strokes. With the end in sight, I try to crawl with everything I've got just to reach the ladder. I barely make it, followed by an equally exhausted Lieutenant Beach, who's had an even tougher time of it because his helmet kept falling in front of his eyes. Next came a simulated helicopter rescue. We were taught the proper way to get hoisted aboard. First, let the rescue device, like this forest penetrator, touch the water to discharge static electricity. Pull the paddle down and strap in, and then give the thumbs up signal. Two parachute tests followed. First, I was dragged in the water and had to roll over and release myself from the parachute harness. Then I had to extricate myself from the tangle of shroud lines underneath the parachute canopy. The second mandatory test consisted of 15 minutes of treading water while wearing all the flight gear. We were allowed to inflate the air bladders in our G-suits and use our helmets for extra flotation. Then the final hurdle, the 9D5. The simulator duplicates a helicopter crash at sea, and because helicopters are top-heavy, they tend to roll over and sink inverted. So does the 9D5. After being briefed on how to escape, 4 of us climbed up the catwalk and strapped in. We followed the briefing. Brace for crash. Wait for the water to reach your chin. Take a deep breath. Count to 8. Wait for the violent motion to stop. Release and feel your way to the designated escape hatch and then forcibly push yourself out. And do it all blindfolded. For the final mandatory test, we are dropped right side up, but only the main door can be used. We must proceed, groping around the cabin blindfolded in pre-designated order. I will be the last man out. This is Chuck Caro, CNN Special Assignments.
Some of the nation's maritime sailors are facing an internal fight with one of their biggest employers, the U.S. Navy. Seems like the Navy wants to spread more jobs around, but is being asked to hold off until Congress takes a look at some rather large salaries and fringe benefits going to maritime union bosses. Correspondent Jack Mitchell has more.
Among major American industries in decline, perhaps none is in worse shape than the U.S. Merchant Marine. Where there were more than 50,000 jobs just 20 years ago, there are now less than 1/3 that number.
The only thing I can say is that foreign competition is killing us.
That heavily subsidized foreign competition, along with automation, has turned the U.S. maritime industry into a workforce of mostly middle-aged men, whose seniority provides them with only part-time employment.
We'll have to get off the ship, go back to our union hall, re-register, and it'll be, the way shipping is right now, we're looking at anywhere between 6 to 8 months before we can get another job.
Now, however, the Navy has thrown a lifeline to a dying merchant marine. The Pentagon wants to expand strategic sealift capabilities of military cargo around the world. That means desperately needed union jobs aboard scores of private ships under contract to the Navy. But at least one knowledgeable observer, retired Admiral Kent Caro, charges that several powerful maritime unions have been socking the Navy for excessive wages, pensions, and benefits.
More time. 105,000 salary. 115,000 vacation, 18,000 overtime. That comes up to within $1,000 of $240,000. In addition, 10,500 IRA. In addition, the taxpayer is paying for a pension fund over $50,000. And when you add all this up, it comes to $306,000. Now
split between two men who are each getting 6 months off a year.
That's correct.
Those six-figure costs are examples of a union shipmaster's wages and benefits, which Admiral Caro told Congress could total up to $360,000 a year per position. While head of the Navy's Military Sealift Command, Caro also discovered that the union wages cause costs to jump for civilian maritime officers paid by the Navy.
And we have some horror stories where a fellow 25 out of college 2 years drew over $90,000 in 1982. But those costs for a junior officer is equal or more than what a commanding officer of a nuclear-powered carrier with 5,000 people would receive.
The SS Maine is one of approximately 145 ships currently under contract to the Navy, about two-thirds of which employ union crews. In North Carolina recently, CNN visited while the Maine was participating in a military cargo exercise called Kendall Liberty. Aboard were seamen from several maritime unions, including the Masters, Mates, and Pilots Union. Its members think it's unfair to compare them with military workers.
We don't have a commissary to go to and buy things at a reasonable rate either. We have to go to the supermarket, and we have to provide insurance and things like this that the military have. They take what is all gratis with them as common, that we have to provide all of our salaries. You're comparing a civilian pay with military pay. It's never been equal.
In addition, the union seafarers are unhappy about having to work on ships which are often as old as the workers are.
Look how many ships that we have left, and look at the condition of these things.
This ship was built during 1942, and this is what they're trying to use in 1985.
No wonder the military is upset about it. It's something to be upset and to get upset about. No doubtedly, but they're hollering wages at us, our unions. We're the scapegoats. The working man has always been the scapegoat.
Eugene Spector represents the National Maritime Union, whose members also work on the ships contracted to the Navy. He admits the Navy's budgetary concerns were partially justified.
I believe that their complaint of the cost of the operation was correct. There was a need for reevaluation of the labor cost factor.
Spector added, however, that last year the maritime unions made wage concessions totaling 15%. And new contracts, he said, included special rates for union pension and benefit plans, which also substantially reduced costs for the Navy. Meanwhile, negotiations continue, and Navy Secretary John Lehman is appointing a 7-person commission to report to Congress about the problems of our ailing maritime industry. I'm Jack Mitchell, CNN Special Assignment.
On a final note, correspondent Jay Gurley has an update on a story he uncovered some months ago involving oil and gas leasing contracts.
This was the Miami office of a company called U.S. Oil and Gas. Ostensibly, it was a geological consulting service. In reality, it was a boiler room, meaning a place for high-pressure telephone selling. 2 years ago, field producer Sandy Myers and I posed as would-be salesmen. We were hired by the company and enrolled in a training program supervised by this man, Irv Sand. He taught us to promise all customers that because of the company's geological expertise, they were certain to be successful in a lease lottery conducted by the U.S. Department of Interior. But the company's own geologist told us the promises were implausible.
I would not end up recommending a parcel that only 8, 10, 12 people file on. The ones that have only a few people per parcel are junk.
Interior Department documents analyzed by CNN showed that almost all the company's customers lost everything they invested. Crediting our investigative report, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida began prosecuting a case developed by the Postal Inspection Service. As a result, the Florida State Comptroller closed all such boiler rooms in the state. Of the people involved with the company on which we focused, 20 have been convicted, including Henry Harris, the former president of the South Florida Better Business Bureau, who had accepted bribes from the others. The 20 were sentenced to a total of more than 53 years in prison. Harris got 4 years. I'm Jay Gorley, CNN Special Assignment.
That's our show for this weekend. If you have a comment or a suggestion for a story, write to Special Assignment, 2133 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20007. From Atlanta, I'm Larry Woods.